I think that the DAC model proposed by the Centre for Creative Leadership is a very effective tool for leadership in development. DAC stands for Direction, Alignment and Commitment. Direction is reaching agreement on what the collective is trying to achieve together. Alignment is coordination and integration of the different aspects of the work to achieve this shared direction. Commitment is achieved when people put the success of the project above their own personal success. Instead of putting all the weight of leadership on the capabilities of individuals, the DAC model takes a systems approach to understanding the interactions and exchanges across a collective. In development, the term collective usually refers to a community or a cooperative. The DAC model more broadly refers to all of the people involved in the organisation of a program or process. So in addition to the community, it incorporates a range of stakeholders. The three elements of the DAC model came through strongly in a project to rebuild a remote Aboriginal community in Australia called Mapoon. The history of Mapoon is quite tragic. In 1963, the community was relocated by the Queensland government to make way for mining exploration, which culminated in the burning and demolition of many private homes. From the 70s and 80s, people returned to Mapoon, where they lived quite informally in makeshift, self-built dwellings. From the 90s, government support emerged to re-establish the Mapoon community. This required a new community plan and considerable infrastructure in water, sewerage, roads and houses. I led the community planning process and then played an advisory role during the construction. The project began with an extensive community consultation process over a 1-year period. This involved many meetings, a household survey, a planning committee, and mapping methods using aerial photography. The consensus that emerged was relatively straightforward. The community wished to recreate the original mission layout before it was closed, including their family blocks. Sounds simple, but the devil was in the detail. There was much diversity of opinion at an individual household level, but we were able to reach a point where most people felt that they got most of what they wanted. People had good reason to complain given their prior treatment, but at some point they began to see the glass half full rather than half empty. Frequent and clear communication was a key factor to building this shared vision. This community consensus gave the project a firm direction. So we achieved the first component of the DAC model. Finding the technical and financial resources to rebuild the community required extensive collaboration across a diverse range of federal, state government and private sector stakeholders. There was widespread support among these stakeholders, given what the Mapoon people had endured. One senior government figure described the project as natural justice. Many of these stakeholders were also overwhelmed by the social problems of other remote Indigenous communities. Mapoon presented them a clean slate on which to build something better. And the community plan gave them the blueprint for action. It not only documented community aspirations, it also gave sufficient technical detail for these stakeholders to run with. So we were able to achieve alignment across a collective of community and stakeholders. I was quite surprised by the level of support shown by the government stakeholders, who in my experience were generally reluctant to depart from their particular policy or project frames. This alignment became quite widespread and exceeded the influence of the community leaders, myself, and others involved with the project. In other words, the alignment took on a life of its own, and the collective spread beyond the initial actors. Enacting the new community plan required large construction budgets and contracts to be delivered over many years. 10 years after the initial community plan was completed, and long after I had ended my involvement, I was surprised to learn how development had continued to follow the plan. Although it had no legal basis, community leaders and external stakeholders maintained their commitment to find the funds, to rebuild the town, and to maintain the integrity of the plan. At different times, new players arrived on the scene who wished to depart from the community plan, but there was sufficient support within the collective to keep the plan intact. Although there was no statutory basis to the town plan, different construction companies shared technical drawings of the community plan between them, which they passed from contract to contract. So the collective maintained an unusual level of commitment to the project, whereby an informal system of town planning continued for the decade to come. The three elements of the DAC model, direction, alignment, and commitment, were all present at Mapoon. This occurred through a form of distributed leadership across a collective which went well beyond the efforts of myself or any community leader or project practitioner. Many different people across the system contributed to the leadership process. This type of distributed leadership is very different from a charismatic individual who, against the odds, keeps on going, carrying the project until it is completed. None of the community leaders or the project staff had the position power to command the different stakeholders to respond. I think this is a typical scenario for successful development projects.